Okay, welcome back to the Opperman Report. I'm your host, private investigator Ed Opperman. And this segment of the show is brought to you by emailrevealer.com. You go to emailrevealer.com. You can get an autographed copy of my book, How to Become a Successful Private Investigator. Also, to do all kind of investigative services there, asset searches, locates. We have a lot of success lately with adoption investigations. So if you're seeking to reunite with your biological parent or a biological child that you were separated from through adoption process, get a hold of us there at emailrevealer.com, or you can email me directly at oppermaninvestigations@gmail.com. Okay, we have with us today Donald Michael, who is a consulting geologist. And Mr. Michael was involved in examining the property of the McMartin PreSchool to determine if there were any tunnels under there, any kind of underground rooms, and he's going to be telling us about his experience with that. Mr. Michaels, are you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, thank you so much. Can you tell us about yourself? Who is Eugene Donald Michael?
Well, I'm a consulting geologist and grew up in the Los Angeles area. Have my degrees from Occidental College and UCLA, and been practicing since almost 55 years. And to know about my professional background is best to go to my website, which is Malibu Geology Then and Now. And that tells you pretty much everything that's going on with me right now. As to the McMartin thing, I was contacted by one of the professors at UCLA with whom I worked when I was in graduate school there. And I don't really recall a lot about how it came about, but I did get called down to the McMartin school. I'm sorry, did you hear something?
No.
Did you say something?
No, you're fine. You're fine.
In any event, I was called down to the McMartin school and met with a number of the parents who were really emotionally involved in this thing. It was really a matter of concern, and I didn't know how I could help them, but they asked me about tunnels and that sort of thing. So, along with a colleague of mine, Dr. Herb Adams, we ran a seismic line on one side of the building where it's likely there might have been a tunnel, and we didn't discover anything. The real problem that it turns out, I think, is that next door there were a number of garages that were locked, and according to someone at the site at the time, they didn't know who owned those properties and had no way to get into them. And so we let it go at that. I did meet with Ted Gunderson.
Let me ask you a couple questions.
Yeah.
Now, first of all, the property of the McMartin preschool, how close was that to the beach, to the actual beach? Sure.
I'd have to look at the map, but I'd say a couple of miles.
Okay, a couple of miles. Okay. All right, because I was a little confused about that. Now, when
just adjacent to Sepulveda Boulevard.
Okay. I'm not that familiar with California, but I'm from Nevada. Now, again, you say that you were told at the scene. But by the way, how many parents were there to meet you at the scene?
As I recall, and it's been a while. Anything I say here has to be viewed through a telescope of about 30 years.
Yeah.
But it seems to me there were 4 or 5.
Now you say that they told you, well, we don't have access to these garages. Do you remember who that was that told you that they didn't know about the garages and you didn't have access to it?
If I had to speculate, which I do, it seems to me it was one of the people connected with the McMartin school.
Oh, there were people there who represented the school were there?
Oh, absolutely, and it was open. I was allowed to go in the schoolroom and look around the outside. And it was not a really a well-organized situation. I simply got a call from these people and went down there to see what was going on.
Okay, this is fascinating. So the people who represented the school, actually Peggy McMartin or Bucky McMartin were there, or just representatives?
I don't recall Bucky, and I don't recall his mother, who ran the school. I just don't recall with whom I spoke.
No, that's understandable. You're not going to recall everything.
But it was wide open. I mean,
was the school still in business? At the time you went there, was the school still in business?
I don't know. There weren't any children there, that's for sure.
Okay. Now, what about, did it seem like it was operating? Was it there, functioning desks and paper and, things like that?
Yeah, there's nothing unusual about the school facilities itself. And my impression was that this whole thing had blown up within the past few days at the time I visited the site.
Okay. And what was the timeline? What was going on with the arrests and the trial, and compared to the time that you were there on the scene?
It's my impression there was no trial at all yet.
So, really? So this was there
was no lawsuit. This was strictly a sort of an emergency investigation kind of thing. Was my impression, but certainly a lawsuit I don't think had been filed.
Well, but you're aware that there was a big criminal trial, right, that went on for like over a year.
Later on, I heard about it, but at that time there was no trial. No.
Okay. Do you recall the date and that you went down there?
No, sir, I don't.
If I got back to you in the future, you think you could find out for me?
After your call the other day, I went to the records that I have, and although I haven't looked at all my field books yet, they're spread around in various places, and I haven't looked at them in years. There might be some notes there, but I haven't really checked that.
Okay, I don't want to put you on the spot, start giving you homework, okay? We just met, practically.
Don't worry about you can't put me on the spot.
Okay. From our discussion off the air, I believe you. Now, and now you live in Malibu?
I'm in the Gora Hills now. I lived in Malibu for 50 years, but I moved away about, I guess, 7 or 8 years ago.
A beautiful area. The traffic's getting kind of crazy, but a beautiful area. We were just up there hiking at Solstice Trail, and we were at the Getty Villa Museum. We were just there not even 2 weeks ago. Now, you said you came into contact with Ted Gunderson. What did he have to tell you?
Well, he was sort of wondering too at that point. I ran this thing on the website day after you called, right. And turned out Mr. Gunderson was a witness at the trial and was deeply involved in the thing. But at the time I met him, my impression was he'd just been called down there and had been retired from the FBI field office only a short time before that. We sat down and talked a while and had a hamburger at a nearby joint. I forget exactly what we talked about, but there was not a hell of a lot to say at that point because no one knew anything.
Okay, and did he seem to be convinced of the allegations? Did they explain to you what the allegations were that had them all upset?
No, that would have been premature. He was wondering himself. You have to understand this was at a very early stage of what was going on, and nobody really understood the dimensions of it at all. Okay.
Now, did you spend several days there or just one day?
Totally, I probably visited there 3 days.
Okay, so the first day you went down there, you talked to the parents, you talked to the owners of the school or representatives of the school, and then I guess you went back and got some equipment?
Some time later, yeah. Dr. Herb Adams and myself were friends from way back, and I just asked him if he'd help me run a seismic line, and he said sure. So we did that, and at the only place it's feasible that there might have been a tunnel and didn't pick up anything, it was at the rear of the building on its be the northern side. And that was the extent of it.
Okay. And you told me in the letter you sent me that you never charged them for any of this? You did this all off the cuff, on your own dime?
Yeah.
Okay. And this is because
that's the sort of thing you don't charge for that kind of thing when it's the emotional aspect of it was involved, and it just seemed to me to be inappropriate to do it. So
yeah, I totally understand. I'm a private investigator. Sometimes you get called in. Someone just got arrested, or a runaway kid. The kid just ran away, and you can't start talking money. Hey, I need a retainer before I drive over there. You gotta drop what you're doing and just help. So
it's one thing to do some work for someone who's going to who's involved monetarily and trying to get something done. But when you're involving with people whose children may have been mistreated in some way, that just isn't very appropriate.
So you came back with some equipment, and what did you conclude from the first run with the equipment?
That there wasn't a tunnel at the rear of the building.
But the only place you checked was the rear?
Yeah. On the west side was a slope, a vacant lot, really, and there was just no way that there could have been a tunnel entrance there without it being visible. And of course, on the south side was, I guess, Manhattan Beach Boulevard, and on the east side were these garages.
Now that's interesting, because now you read that report from Dr. Stickle, I believe you pronounce his name, Dr. Stickle.
I only read it after you sent it to me the other day.
So you'd never seen it before then, and no one's ever contacted you before I contacted you to discuss this?
Nope.
That's fascinating. So many people talk about this case, and here you got the horse's mouth. We have the horse's mouth on the phone here from Malibu. It's just
at the right end there.
Very good, very good. Okay.
Let me correct one thing. I was contacted later, and I'm embarrassed to say that I still haven't been able to find any notes on it. But after the building had been raised, and God knows whether the lawsuit was on or not, I don't know, but I was called down there by someone, I can't recall the name, and this is what's critical about this whole thing, is that there was a room that must have been under the northern side of the school building. And as I described to you in my email, it was carved in the dune deposits, which underlays that area, and nice, well-cut vertical walls, and a series of steps that went down, also cut in the dune deposits, and a room, to the best of my recollections, about 8 feet square with a headroom of about 7 feet. And there was nothing in it, but that room was definitely there. And I can't imagine that somehow that wasn't brought out at trial.
Right.
Maybe it was just not understood. But with regard to the timing of the thing, it's very, very questionable about what the hell went on.
Yeah, my understanding is what happened was the McMartin family turned over the deed to the property to their attorneys to pay their legal fees, and that there was a period they raised the property, and there was a period of time when they were going to rebuild something new on there, where they allowed the parents to go back and examine it again. Now, when you found this, and this room you found was a basement type, unfinished basement. This was like raw material, right? Just dug. Could you tell if it was dug by hand or?
It was cut in cohesive dune deposits.
Now, could you tell if it was dug by hand or with machinery?
Not machinery. It must have been dug by hand. And what is really comes to mind is how it was done, whether or not the access to it was from the garages side of the structure. And there were a couple of truckloads of, I forget, I made a rough calculation, at least 2 10-wheeler truckloads of material had to be gotten rid of somehow. And how that was accomplished without there being some record of it is a really, really difficult to understand.
Right. Right. It's fascinating. Now, but you didn't see any tunnels going to this room or coming from this room.
The idea of, I know I read Mr. Stickles' report. The idea of there being tunnels running around under there, why is where would they go and what would they be used for? That's kind of, it just doesn't compute. What is interesting that there was a room where people, maybe children, I don't know, there's no evidence that the thing was ever misused, but it was sure as hell there.
Right. Now, was this the entrance, the stairway? Was this the access to the stairway was from those garages you described?
You know, I'm embarrassed to say that I can't definitely say that's the case. The buildings, both the garages and the structure, have been raised.
Okay.
And it's a matter of poor memory on my part that I can't remember exactly the relationship between the stairs and the rest of the structures there. But and looking back on it, it seems to me that it had to be from the garage side.
Fascinating, right? So it had. So the fact that the garages were also raised would indicate that the garage property was owned by the same people that owned the school property.
Well, that's a good question. There ought to be a record of that with the tax assessor's parcel number, and all you'd have to do would be to institute a title search and see who the previous owners were.
Right, and also too, it should tell you too in the property record search whether or not there was a legal basement there underneath that garage.
A legal what?
A legal basement. They'll tell you in the property records if there's a basement or not.
No, well, I guess that's true. But what is most interesting from my point of view is that as I understand it now, the property's fully redeveloped,
right,
with a savings and loan or something.
Dry cleaners.
Whatever it is, the school site itself has been completely excavated, and there's a parking lot there. My impression from looking at the Google Maps, and in order to have that done, there had to be a consulting geology report and a consulting soils engineers report in order to get the grading done and to get in whatever new foundations are there now. And the guys that did that work, and you could call them and see if they recall any cuts in the slope in the area beneath the schoolhouse. If there was, I'd be surprised if they didn't appear in their notes.
Okay, I didn't even know that was possible. Okay, so I can find out who did those reports and contact them. And do you think they would have photographs or just a report?
It's possible. First of all, you find out if Manhattan Beach, which I think this is in the corporate boundaries of Manhattan Beach, likely Manhattan Beach, for this kind of work, had the county do the work. I don't think Manhattan Beach had its own Department of Building and Safety, at least for this kind of work. So that's how you'd have to check on it, is find out which agency controlled building and safety in that particular area at that particular time, and you go from there.
Okay, that's right up my alley. That's just the kind of stuff I can do. Now,
and remember that by law there has to have been the reports to which I refer in order to get the grading and building permits for whatever structure is there now.
And they would have to keep that kind of thing on file pretty much forever because they're constantly rebuilding properties and stuff. They would need that forever, right?
Absolutely. A title search is a title search. It goes all the way back to when the property was first developed.
That's right. It goes back to the 1800s. I've seen them back in, in Staten Island. Those things went back forever. Yeah.
To 1850.
Yeah. Well, okay. Now, were you ever contacted by anyone from either the prosecutor's office or from the defense team?
No.
Your contact with Gunderson, did he seem like he was trying to influence your conclusions either way?
No. He was as much at sea as I was. We were just sort of discussing the thing, but this was very, very early in the game, and neither of us knew enough to offer any real substantive ideas at that time.
And who was it that invited you back when you found the basement? We'll call it the basement. Who was it that invited you back to the scene at that point?
I can't remember.
Was it Jackie Maguli? Maguli?
Pardon me?
Was her name Jackie, perhaps?
It could have been.
Okay, you don't remember, though. Okay.
No.
Now, you've reviewed a bit. I sent you the copy of Dr. Stickles' report.
Yeah.
What do you make of that?
Well, I'm reluctant to criticize. Mr. Stickle, or Dr. Stickle, is not a geologist, and I don't know. First of all, I don't know the stage of. Doesn't he mention some kind of ground radar investigation they did?
That wasn't him. That was a third party who did the ground penetrating radar. I think that was done by the prosecutor's office. So
maybe so, but
yeah.
at that time, that system, as I recall, wasn't so well developed that you could definitely recognize tunnels. It's only been later in the ground radar technique where I think now tunnels, yes, can be recognized, but at that time I wonder if that was the case.
Well, Dr. Stickle, his report says that he actually went there and dug out these tunnels. He dug the fill out of these tunnels.
Yeah, I've read that.
Right, and he found wood beams under there and a tar paper roof with plywood roof in this big room down. By the way, you didn't see any signs of that, did you? In the room that you found,
anything remotely like that. No.
Now, also too, and you'll probably never remember this, but when you were there, when the school, I'm sorry.
Say again. Speak a little more slowly, if you would, please.
I know. So I'm from New York. I'm sorry. But I know you'll probably never remember this part. But when you were there at the school, when the school was open and it was still somewhat functioning, the children described there being animal cages near the entrance to the tunnel. Do you recall seeing any kind of animal cages?
No.
Okay.
I don't recall any tunnel.
Right. And even the DA's office, too, searched for an entrance to the tunnel. They could not find any either. But if you read Dr. Stickles' report, too, he describes finding tiles, that there was some recent tile work done.
Well, and of course he took photographs of it.
Yeah, I know. I can't get a hold of him. He hasn't gotten back to me.
Well, unless you see photographs of it, I would tend to discount his description.
Very interesting. And now, in your experience, is that possible, though, to reconstruct tunnels and determine whether it's filled in and that kind of stuff?
I suppose if you be a little more explicit about what you mean, you can dig a tunnel, yes. Yeah. You can put stuff in it, yes. So what? It just seems to me that from what I read of what you sent me on Dr. Stickles' report, that it wasn't written in such a way as to be able to postulate exactly how things had been constructed or deconstructed, but the idea of wood beams I find astonishing.
Yeah, he describes them. Yeah, and he describes also too that there being some sewage pipes that had new clamps placed on them, but there was a slab above them, so that they couldn't have gotten to these sewage pipes from above. They had to get to them from these tunnels, and finding a cauldron down there and a pottery and a tree root that was sawed by hand with a hand saw on each end, 3 feet apart.
Yeah, I read that too, but yeah. Basically this is a place where they build a school on a sand dune. And if all of this then transpired later on, there must be some kind of a record of it, but Where I stopped listening to Dr. Stickle is in the absence of any photographs.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Okay. Do you think there's anything I've forgotten to ask you about this incident?
I can't. No, I can't think of anything.
And is there anything you'd like to add?
No.
Okay.
I wasn't that close to the thing, and I'm uncomfortable because my memory isn't as good as it should be, and I'm reluctant to offer any opinions because of that.
Well, you got to take a witness as they come. You know what I mean? If a witness has a bad memory, not a bad memory, but if it's 40 years ago, 30 years ago, you got to take that into account. You can't expect and not every witness is going to be Superman with a super memory, So
it's just that at the time I was involved, the dimensions of the lawsuit that developed, all of that was far in the future. There was nothing like that in mind at the time. It was right then. There was the question of whether or not it was a number of hysterical parents who maybe nothing but that and some improper questioning of children. The thing hadn't gotten nearly to the stage of a lawsuit at that time.
Well, with your conclusion though now, or your opinion after seeing that room underneath the garage with the staircase,
that sure as hell something.
Yeah,
it was involved there. Yes.
Okay, so then you would have to give credence to the children's accounts that they were taken to an underground location. Or?
No, won't go that far. All I can say is that there was a room below the structure at the rear, and it was not any kind of a structure that would have been approved by a Department of Building and Safety, for example. You don't have a room 7-foot high walls, no matter how well excavated, in cohesive sand dunes. It's too damn dangerous.
But is it the kind of thing that possibly irresponsible people, outside of using it for this horrific activity that's alleged here, that's irresponsible people would attempt something like that just for a root cellar or a storage room? Would people do something crazy like that?
Root schmoot. There's something strange going on, but I can't imagine any. It's hard to say. There might have been some legitimate reason that the thing was excavated, but it was done very well. I mean, the walls were were quite vertical and well finished in the sense of being cut, as were the steps. There was. I just can't really imagine why anyone would do that. In order to have a storage space or something like that.
So you can't think of any innocent explanation for this?
I cannot.
Okay. How many men do you think it would take to build a structure like that, to do an excavation like that?
Well, it wouldn't take more than one man. The question is, how long would it take?
How long would it take, even with 2 or 3 men?
I don't know. How energetic are you?
That's true. Okay. That's true. These are tough questions, I got to admit. I can't.
It's just... You can right now go to some places in the area and see what it takes with a shovel, for example, a shovel, to excavate a more cohesive section of the dune deposits. From that, you could judge how long it would take. But other than that, I don't think anyone can say.
Okay. All right. Mr. Michaels, thank you so much for your help here today. I really appreciate it. If you do think of anything else, you got my email. If you can think of the dates, something like that, and perhaps I might want to consult with you in the future about, because I'm going to be contacting the Department of Building and Safety, just like you recommended, and all that kind of stuff. But I can't thank you enough for your time today.
You're welcome, and good luck on it.
Thank you, sir. Good night.
You bet. Bye.
Okay, they had what's his name here? Because the guy's got 3 names. Eugene, Donald Michael. He's a consultant geologist. His website is Malibu Geology. And if you just Google Malibu Geology then and now, you could find his biography and stuff like that. And an eyewitness to seeing a structure dug out of the ground underneath the McMartin preschool. And what I think he said is that the staircase was underneath this garage. The garage was raised at the same time as the school was raised. And I know the story behind that. It was sold to the lawyers, and the lawyers allowed these searches to go on. So the next step in this is we got to check out just this great advice this guy gave me here to check out this geology report from the Department of Building and Safety. This grading and building stuff like that. He's absolutely right. That stuff is on there forever. Because I've seen those title searches back. In New York, title searches are done totally different than they are here on the West Coast. And I've seen them. They go way back to, colonial days, practically. So, okay, that's good stuff. We're going to be following up on this story in the future. If you like what you hear, don't forget oppermanreport@gmail.com. You can make a donation, or oppermanreport.com, and you can support the members section so we can continue these kinds of investigations. I have an opportunity right now to travel up to San Francisco area with an additional satanic ritual abuse case that's groundbreaking, that there's totally uncovered before. No one's talked about it before. That we can report for you on there. If I can get my butt up there, we can film it. And I'd like to do some filming down here too, and determine what was going on with this this garage and stuff like that. If you know anybody out there has any more information about this McMartin case, get a hold of me at oppermanreport@gmail.com. Okay, thank you so much.